Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This guy over here is Tim, and this is The Second Legacy, and thank you so much for stopping by. All right, guys, today we are going to talk about the breaking news that Alec Baldwin is essentially off the hook. Now, there's a lot of things we're going to break down. Should he not? Should he? Was it a crime? Was it not a crime? Tim and I are going to break it down. And if you enjoy this content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. We need as many of you as possible to help pass the Second Amendment along to the next generation by basically countering gun control arguments on the daily. But with that, Tim, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. You know, I was perusing the news, and of course, like everybody else, I saw the news break about Alec having the charges against him dropped, and I thought, well, isn't this interesting? And of course, the conversations on the internet immediately turned to rules for thee, not for me, and, you know,
oh, absolutely,
because he's politically connected, somebody pulled some strings, and it's an interesting situation. It's going to be fun to dive into.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So from a high level, here's the end result. Alec Baldwin's not going to get criminally charged. Let's just call it duck a duck. It's been sliding downhill ever since they initially basically brought charges on something that it was questionable if it was going to be charged or not. Now, there's lots of things here to break into, but I guess the high level question we're really going to assess right now is what level of culpability does Alec Baldwin actually hold? Because personally, a long history of gun control does kind of influence the conversation a little bit, particularly when you aren't following the basic safety rules of the entire gun world. But again, is that criminal? Is that liability in civil court? Like, where does that land? So I guess, what's your initial take on this, high level?
Well, you know, it's been kind of the whole story sucks. I mean, a person lost her life and somebody else was seriously wounded, and it was all avoidable, right? Mm-hmm. And what it boils down to is that, you know, Alec has a long history of supporting gun control, being rabidly anti-gun. He even went so far, and I'm paraphrasing, but he made a tweet some years ago about how does it feel to kill somebody, to somebody else that he was arguing gun control with. And then here we sit where he's now actually killed somebody. And again, I think there's, like you said, there's so many different angles to this. I was going to take off one piece here and kind of work my way in. But here's a man that throughout his entire professional career has made money showing the use and misuse of firearms in movies, right? Mm-hmm. So he's played criminals and he's played good guys, right? But the thing is he's been using firearms in movies for decades. So you would think, much like myself, I use firearms professionally. I make firearms videos. And just being around them, being in the culture, having taken training classes, I've become, you know, safety cautious with the firearms, right? I try to avoid making dangerous mistakes. It's at the top of my mind every day when I pick up a gun to go film. We're always thinking about safety. So why wasn't he, right? He assumed, he offloaded the responsibility of safety to somebody else on the set. Now, that's probably pretty normal in Hollywood. But the thing is he knew he was playing with a real firearm. He knew, because there's been events that have happened in Hollywood in the past, that the potential was there for the firearm to discharge and kill somebody. It's happened before, right? Mm-hmm. Accidents on sets have happened. So this has to be in his mind. But yet he chose anyway not to learn about the firearm, not to handle the firearm safely, to point it in a safe direction. He pointed it at somebody, and then somebody else had loaded the gun, not him, presumably. We haven't seen the evidence, just going based on what's been reported in the media. So while he didn't load the gun, he did pull the trigger. He knew the gun was real. He pointed it at a living person and pulled the trigger. So the question is does he have criminal liability? Well, I would think negligent homicide, accidental death of some sort, depending on the state law, would be relevant here, right? Much like if you kill somebody driving erratically in a car. You know how to use a car, you know a car is a dangerous tool, but you were doing burnouts and going 110 miles an hour down the highway and you killed somebody. Well, that's negligence, and that negligence resulted in somebody's death. Exact same thing with him. However, I think politics, but not in the way some folks might think, have played a role in getting these charges dropped. I think that the DA, a political position, probably realized they didn't have enough evidence to push that homicide charge, negligent homicide, whatever the charge may have been. They didn't think they could get it through the court. They didn't think they were going to win. Losing is costly to the taxpayer, looks bad on the DA. And so those decisions are often made. We're not going to prosecute this one. We don't want that egg on our face. We don't think we're going to win this one in court. So now it falls to a civil court. right? Now, I think in a civil court, the argument is really strong, where it might have been a little wishy-washy depending on state law in New Mexico. Criminally, it might have been a reach. In civil court, he's going to be liable, much like O.J. Simpson, right? Beat the criminal rap.
I completely agree.
Got held accountable.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Go ahead.
So the big thing for me on this, and this is a head scratcher, genuinely, because it was already a loaded topic, right, so to speak. You had a well-known gun controller not following well-known safety protocols that everyone in the gun world knows and utilizes every single day. Because that respect for that firearm is there, it clearly wasn't here in this case. Or, to your point, the entire thing was offloaded to another individual, which, to be honest, let's just call it duck a duck, that does happen a lot with elitists. Just saying. Well, I didn't do it because I'm not going to check that thing. I've got people to do that. Well, the consequences are pretty serious when you go down this road with this type of acting. Now, I'm kind of with you a little bit on this, right? So if you're going down the road of an actual provable charge to actually convict someone, it adds a different element when there's a gun involved, because right now guns are a political hot point in our culture, and the left will say a gun was involved, so someone needs to be charged, and the people in the middle or the people on the right would say, well, break it down. Was it actually, like you just did, was it actually negligence? Was it intent? What was going on there? Because the criminal intent is the important piece in a criminal court of law. It's not actually what directly happened. It's, was the intent set out to achieve this means? Now, that's what the difference between specific levels of criminality and specific levels of manslaughter and negligence. We're not lawyers, right? We're not posturing that we are. But I think the interesting piece about this is kind of what you said. This, at least in my opinion, was extremely based on negligence. This entire thing could have been prevented if basic safety protocols had been followed by Alec Baldwin, not just his staff, not his crew. I mean, in our own world, I'm sure people watching this video, Tim, if a firearm is ever handed to you, what's the first thing that you do?
You check it to make sure that it's empty. Even at a gun store, the clerk will check the weapon and then hand it to you, and then you check it. That's just standard etiquette.
It's standard.
Yeah, it is standard etiquette. Anybody that steps into the gun world for even a minute will see that etiquette on full display.
Absolutely.
It's crazy to think that. Well, another actor actually, and I don't know who the actor was, but I think it was another tweet. One of the actors out there said that, well, in my world, I've taken firearm safety and I check my own firearms to make sure they're not loaded on set. So there's an actor saying, yeah, I realize that these things are potentially dangerous. We're using real firearms for whatever reason. You'd think they would get past that in 2023, but they're still using real firearms that can be loaded with live cartridges on movie sets. And so this actor realizes the danger, which anybody, especially Alec Baldwin, a rabid anti-gunner who thinks guns should all be banned, so he apparently understands that they're potentially dangerous, but yet he doesn't go out there to learn how to make the weapon safe himself. He offloads that when other actors have said, yeah, man, it's just common sense. I always check the gun I'm handed because I don't know who this prop master is, right? So it's no different than the gun counter etiquette that we were just talking about. Even if a prop master hands me a gun and says, it's cold, I'm going to look at that weapon, check it, and make sure it is in fact cold. If he hands it to me and says it's loaded with blanks, I'm going to open it up and look to make sure it's loaded with blanks.
Absolutely.
And you would think that this would be standard etiquette on movie sets where accidents have happened in the past, yet this happened. So, yeah, man, I think it's just that area where the DA is unsure of the charges, and that's why they're getting dropped.
Yeah, I mean, that's... And you know something else? I completely agree with your perspective on that. I think what will be interesting is watching the reaction to this. Because in our world, in the gun world, the gun politics and the gun control, gun rights, sometimes the story is not what occurred. Sometimes what you want to follow and look at is what the reaction is. Because in this scenario, if this was someone other than Alec Baldwin, like maybe a gun rights activist or a gun rights, I don't know, personality, would the reaction be the same from the left, or would there be an outrage? Would there be demands for common sense gun reform? What would happen if the person and individual were different? That's something that I think is interesting, because if this was not Alec Baldwin, what would have been the outcome? Again, back to your original point, rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah. If it was Tom Selleck, he'd be sitting in jail right now.
Right. So, like, is that even a piece of the puzzle? Exactly, possibly. But again, it goes down to prosecutorial discretion. So I think that 100% he's going to get smoked in civil court. I mean, absolutely just smoked.
He has it coming. He was negligent.
Yeah.
Based on
Absolutely.
what I've seen so far, haven't seen the evidence, but what I've seen reported, it's clear negligence.
It looks extremely bad from that perspective. Again, I think really where the hairs are splitting is criminal versus negligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And also keep in mind, he was the executive producer or one of the producers. So he was responsible for hiring that prop master.
Right.
He was responsible for on-set safety. He was responsible for all this stuff. But he's being absolved of that, at least criminally, and now he's going to face the piper in civil court, and we'll see how that plays out.
Oh, I think that's a very good breakdown and assessment of what just happened, because while there are so many elements of what we just talked about, I genuinely think in this case that's exactly, I'm not going to say the right outcome, but that's what I would expect looking at everything that I see, kind of aligning with what you're saying. This seems much more aligned to a dramatic negligence than a criminal intent. I don't know. I don't like Alec Baldwin. I don't like his political stances, but to be quite honest, objectively, that's what I see. I mean, you guys let us know in the comments field.
Yeah. They're not objective when dealing with us and our rights. But I want to be objective. I want to cut slack where slack should be cut. I don't know what the answer is with regards to his criminal, liability, because I haven't seen the evidence. Again, we have to go with what's been made publicly available. But yeah, I mean, it certainly points to negligence, and I do think it'll wind up in civil court, and he'll probably be held accountable. We'll see. That's up to the family of those affected. So, but anyway, we look forward to reading your comments down below. Where do you guys stand on this? Do you think Alec should be charged criminally? If so, based on what? What have you seen in the news that would indicate that you think that he should be charged criminally? Not saying he shouldn't be. Just curious what you all think about what's going on. And we would like to thank you for watching The Second Legacy. It means a lot to us. We would ask that you get politically involved, because it is absolutely critical to maintaining our rights that we stay politically engaged. That means calling and emailing your representatives at the state and federal level. And with all that being said, let's get out there, lick the world. We'll talk to you guys soon.